Imagine the Earth as you've never known it, without cities, without trees, without birds, only the wind and the lapping of ancient waves breaking against nameless rocks, a world plunged into silent darkness. This is how the story of our planet began, long before dinosaurs walked upon it. More than 4.5 billion years ago, Earth was born from a cloud of cosmic dust and gas. At first, a red-hot ball of lava, shrouded in a dense veil of poisonous gases. The surface boiled, cracked, and was flooded with magma. It was a time of fire and silence, but even in this fiery chaos, the possibility of life was already hidden. Chemical elements, inherited from ancient stars, awaited their role in the great reaction of Genesis. Millions of years later, when the surface cooled, water began to collect. First, light steam. Then, continuous warm rains. Drop by drop, epoch by epoch, they formed the first oceans. Thus began the Archean Eon, more than 3.5 billion years ago. In these warm, mineral-rich waters, something incredible appeared: life. The first single-celled organisms, unnoticed, simplest. But with their appearance, history gained direction. They had no eyes, no hands, no thoughts. But they had the main thing: the ability to self-reproduce, and therefore to exist. These tiny creatures, prokaryotes, became the progenitors of all life. Swimming in the primordial ocean, they fed on minerals and the energy of chemical reactions. In this warm soup of microlife, a process almost imperceptible, but inexorable, unfolded. Time passed for hundreds of millions of years. Gradually, some organisms learned to use light, and photosynthetic cyanobacteria appeared. Absorbing carbon dioxide, they released oxygen. At first, it reacted with iron in the oceans, settling as rusty deposits. But over time, it became more and more abundant. It began to accumulate in the atmosphere. Thus began the oxygen revolution. 4. The former life forms, oxygen proved to be a poison. They died out, giving way to those who learned to breathe. This changed everything. The possibility arose to extract many times more energy from food. On this new stage, eukaryotes appeared, cells, with a complex structure, with a nucleus where information was stored, with mitochondria, miniature energy stations. It was they who became the basis for future multicellular creatures. First, simple colonies of cells. Some moved, others digested food, still others reacted to light. Then, organisms where cells acted cohesively, as a single organism. This was a true revolution: complexity, specialization, potential. About 600 million years ago, the Ediacaran era began. Soft-bodied creatures appeared on the seabed, resembling feathers, discs, ribbed carpets. They had no bones, no eyes, no clear form. Their life is covered in mystery. But it was they who became the first true multicellular animals. Millions of years rolled into eternity, bringing new forms, new experiments of nature. About 541 million years ago, an event occurred that scientists call the Cambrian explosion. In a relatively short geological time, about 20 million years, life sharply diversified. Animals with hard skeletons, mouths, eyes, and limbs appeared. Movement emerged. Trilobites, armored creatures with segmented bodies, glided through the seas. Their soft-bodied predecessors receded into the shadows. The oceans filled with corals, worms, mollusks, and among this splendor, the first vertebrates appeared. They were small, clumsy, more like tadpoles. But they had a notochord, the rudiment of a spine, which gave flexibility and support. From it began the path leading to dinosaurs, and to humans. The Cambrian world was alien, yet familiar. Earth remained barren, devoid of forests. All life was in the oceans. But beneath the waves, A great work was underway. Sense organs developed, forms of movement evolved, the first complex bodies were built. Evolution carved dozens of parallel paths. Some creatures burrowed into the sand, others writhed in the water. Still others attached themselves to rocks, waiting for food. Each of them was the result of billions of coincidences. Step by step, cell, colony, creature with a mouth and a tail. Then heart, bones, nerves. Epochs succeeded each other. Silurian, Devonian. Earth continued to change. The first plants emerged onto land. Small green patches covered coastal lands. Following them came fungi, then insects. Fish gained jaws. Some developed fins resembling limbs. One day, one of these fish came ashore. Perhaps only for a short time, but from that moment, the history of vertebrates on land began. The circle closed, from the lava abyss to the first breath of air, all. Great forms of life, dinosaurs, birds, humans, originated in these imperceptible, slow processes. Evolution doesn't rush. It breathes slowly. Just like you now, in the dark, under the cover of sleep. Close your eyes. Imagine the silent ocean, bathed in the light of an ancient sun. In its depths, a tiny creature swims. It doesn't know its purpose. It just lives. This is the beginning. This is the source of our history. And as you drift off to sleep, remember, everything began with a drop, with a single cell. And all the noise of the world is just an echo of that drop, which decided to live. In the next chapter, we will rise higher. We will step onto land, into the world of the first giants. We will see how nature conquered continents, built forests, and gave birth to predators. But for now, rest. Let the peace of the ancient oceans lull you. Good night. Imagine a warm evening on a distant planet, not yet as we know it today. The air is filled with the unique aroma of damp earth, green leaves, and a faint hint of sea, salt. A warm breeze gently brushes your skin, ancient leaves rustle, and somewhere in the distance, a stream murmurs softly. Sounds of nature that seem to invite calm and tranquility. You are transported to an era when Earth was covered in dense forests and warm seas, to one of the last days of the Permian period, approximately 250 million years ago. This world breathed with a special rhythm. Enormous ferns and conifers stood tall and mighty, like guardians of ancient secrets. The soft sunlight filtered through the thick foliage, painting shimmering spots and long shadows on the ground. Birds were not yet present, but the air was filled with the sounds of other creatures, rustles, chirps, faint crackling. Everything was as usual, quiet, smooth, and yet life teemed in every corner. Small creatures crawled underfoot. Ancient plants whispered softly to each other, and in the sky, the last rays of sunset melted on the horizon. The world lived and breathed its accustomed life, but deep within the earth, beneath the crust and rocks, a completely different story was unfolding. There, in silence and darkness, a tremendous internal hum began to grow, as if the very belly of the planet was starting to rumble. Deep cracks in the Earth's crust began to widen, and in the silence, the first fiery flashes erupted. Then the eruption began, quietly at first, almost imperceptibly, but then louder and louder. Volcanic lava flows slowly spread across the surface, turning lush forests into a field of incandescent rock. Thick ash rained down from the sky, covering the earth in a gray shroud, and the air became viscous and hot. You can almost feel the pressure, the thick smoke and gas-laden air. The sunlight gradually dimmed, and a twilight descended. All living things sought refuge from this oppressive darkness. Plants slowed their growth, animals lay low, and rivers and lakes seemed to become still. But this darkness was not eternal. It was like a held breath before a grandiose change. The air filled with poisonous gases, sulfur, carbon dioxide, methane, making breathing increasingly difficult. Acid rain streamed from leaves, corroding tree bark and changing the appearance of forests beyond recognition. The oceans became covered with a murky film of ash and toxins. Their waters lost the oxygen necessary for life. Marine creatures, one by one, slipped into oblivion. Imagine this emptiness, the boundless seas where the familiar whisper of waves was no more, only silence and the hollow sound of decaying life. Fish that once swam in schools vanished, leaving only empty spaces. Coral reefs became dead skeletons beneath the water. Everything seemed to freeze in anticipation. On land, the scene was no less terrifying. Animals accustomed to the usual climate lost food and shelter. Intense heat appeared, followed by abrupt cold snaps. Giant lizards and reptiles, once rulers of these lands, gradually disappeared. About 90% of all species, both plant and animal, simply ceased to exist. It was a moment of profound loss, as if all life on Earth took a long, deep breath, paused, and then began all over again. But it was in this chaos and devastation that a new hope emerged. You see small but persistent sparks of life that did not go out. They are like stubborn lights in the dark night, clinging to every shred of life. Small reptiles, the ancestors of those who would one day become dinosaurs, cautiously emerge from their shelters. They are small, inconspicuous, but extraordinarily resilient. They move across the emptied land, exploring the new reality, finding fresh sources of food. New plant species appear, simpler but stronger, capable of surviving in the changed climate. Their leaves are thicker, their roots deeper, and they slowly begin to cover the earth. Under their shadow, silence and peace descend. In the oceans, the first signs of rebirth appear. Fish capable of tolerating low oxygen levels slowly begin to occupy their new homes. Jellyfish and other invertebrates seem to dance in the murky water, creating the first glimmers of life. This process is not fast. It stretches over thousands upon thousands of years, like a quiet symphony of rebirth that gradually fills the emptiness with life and color. You feel this time as a calm, slow current, a river carrying you forward to a new era. The earth begins to breathe anew, filling with energy and light. The stars in the night sky seem brighter, as if approving of this rebirth. And in this new world, the journey of those creatures that would one day become the masters of the land, dinosaurs, begins. They are still small and clumsy, but with each passing day, they grow stronger and more confident. Slow steps, quiet sounds, soft shadows. Thus begins their slow but inevitable ascent. You observe how quietly and smoothly the landscape changes. Young grasses sprout in the empty meadows and fields. The first animals appear in the forests, and the air fills with a new breath. Though this world may seem distant and unfamiliar now, it is the beginning of all that we know. The beginning of a story that we can hear only in our quietest and deepest dreams. Take a deep breath. Feel your breath align with the planet's rhythm. Feel your heart fill with calm and peace. You are part of this great story, this eternal cycle of life and rebirth. May your sleep be filled with this ancient peace, this soft energy of rebirth. Allow yourself to float on the waves of time, letting go of all worries and cares, and immersing yourself in the warm embrace of the night. The earth rests, life awakens, and you with it. Good night. Imagine we are slowly traveling back in time, to those distant epochs when the Earth was just beginning to take on a new form after the great Permian extinction. The world is slowly awakening from a long slumber, gradually filling with new life. In these ancient landscapes, the first chapters of a grand story are born, where creatures live that will one day become masters of the land, and others wise predators of rivers and swamps. These are the archosaurs, an amazing and diverse group of reptiles from which crocodiles and dinosaurs would eventually emerge. Let's immerse ourselves together in this soft current of time, in this gentle narrative of the dawn of a new era, the slow awakening of life and the emergence of archosaurs. As we stand on the shore of an ancient body of water, feeling a light breeze rustling among the low ferns and vocal horsetails, the world around us seems both fragile and full of promise. It is here, in these places, at the turn of the Triassic period, that the first archosaurs appear, ancient reptiles carrying the potential of an entire new epoch. The word archosaurs is like an invitation to an ancient lineage. These creatures are not just animals. They are symbols of a beginning. Their appearance reflects nature's determination to move forward, adapt, and seek new paths. Among them, two main branches stand out: Pseudosuchia and Avemetatarsalia. Let's gently and carefully look at each of them. Pseudosuchia, ancestors of crocodiles. The first branch, Pseudosuchia. They are like the shadows of ancient waters, hiding beneath the cover of dense vegetation. Their bodies are dense and strong, with sturdy scales that gleam in the sun, as if woven from hundreds of small metallic plates. They are slow but powerful, perfectly adapted to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. In their gaze, there is a calm wisdom, a reflection of the depths of ancient swamps. Pseudosuchia are those who lead the lineage of modern crocodiles. Their movements are smooth and measured, like the slow flow of a river. They hunt in the shadows, imperceptibly approaching their prey, using stealth and strength. Their claws and teeth are sharp, but they do not rush. Patience and strategy are more important than speed. In this world, full of dangers and challenges, Pseudosuchia occupy a special place. They are masters of survival, guardians of the secrets of ancient waters. Their evolution is a gradual, profound process, like a sculpture carved by time. Avemetatarsalia, future dinosaurs. The second branch, Avemetatarsalia. Here, everything is quite different. These creatures are slender and light, like the wind that carries the scent of new lands and fresh horizons. Their limbs are long and fast, adapted for running, allowing them to deftly escape danger or pursue prey. Avemetatarsalia are the ancestors of dinosaurs, the first steps towards future dominance on land. Their body is built to be efficient and mobile, combining speed and endurance. Their breathing is deep and even, ready to sustain long runs and quick bursts. Imagine them running across vast plains, hiding among tall ancient horsetails and ferns. Their eyes are attentive, catching every sound and movement. In their movements, there is the energy of a new era, a desire to explore new spaces. Early competition, steps towards survival. In this ancient world, a slow but important struggle takes place between Pseudosuchia and Avemetatarsalia. It is not a fierce and noisy battle, but rather quiet and patient. Each branch seeks its own niches, its own secluded corners, to survive and thrive. Pseudosuchia settled near water, in swamps, rivers, and on lake shores. There, their slowness and power prove to be a great advantage. Their body is protected from predators. Their strength and patience allow them to wait for the moment to seize prey. Avemetatarsalia, in turn, are conquering the land. They are light and fast, able to escape dangers and hunt swiftly. Their advantage lies in their speed, agility, and ability to adapt quickly to a changing environment. This competition does not end in a battle to the death. Rather, it becomes the engine of evolution. Gradually, each branch becomes more specialized and stronger in its own conditions. It creates new forms of life that will, in time, change the face of the earth. Evolutionary advantages. What helps these ancient creatures succeed? Their evolutionary advantages are like gifts from nature, allowing them to forge ahead. Pseudosuchia developed strong armor and powerful jaws. Their body is perfectly adapted to aquatic life. They can stay underwater for long periods, breathe slowly, and hide in the shadows of aquatic plants. This grants them security and the ability to hunt with cold calculation. Avametatarsallians, conversely, gained lightness and endurance. Their legs allow them to run quickly, and their bones became lighter while retaining strength. This opened up vast expanses to them, inaccessible to many other animals. Their success lay in their mobility and ability to react quickly to changes. Each of these advantages is not accidental. It is the result of millions of years of selection, where the strongest do not survive, but those who are best at adapting. Gradual development and the rise of future giants. With each generation, archosaurs slowly change. Their descendants become increasingly diverse, adapting to different conditions. Some grow large and powerful, while others remain small and fast. This process resembles the smooth flow of a river, carrying both cold and warm waters, uniting all the diversity of life in a single current. Time slowly but surely leads to the appearance of dinosaurs, those who will soon become symbols of Mesozoic power and grandeur, and crocodiles, guardians of ancient aquatic realms. The silence of the night and nature's contemplation. As you listen to this story, imagine evening falling over the ancient plains, and the shadows of pseudosuchians and avametatarsallians gradually merging with the cool night. Stars softly twinkle above the ancient sky, and the wind gently rustles the tall ferns. The world of ancient archosaurs is filled with quiet life, a rhythm of nature that resembles the very breath of time itself. There is no haste, no rush, only eternal movement and renewal. And now, as night falls and silence envelops the ancient land, we understand that archosaurs are not merely animals of the past. They are the first steps of a great journey that would lead to the appearance of dinosaurs and crocodiles, to the emergence of new life forms, to the changing face of the earth. This gentle awakening of life after a great extinction is a time of hope and change. Slowly and surely, evolution leads its heroes forward, along the soft path of time, toward new horizons. May this story carry you into a world of peace and harmony, where past and future merge in an endless dance of life. Imagine a distant world, almost unspeakably ancient, over 230 million years ago. Earth had just begun to revive after great catastrophes, and in its soft, warm climate, new life was forming. The Triassic period was a time of change and awakening. The Earth seemed to be waking from a long sleep, and among it, tiny creatures that would become the progenitors of one of the most astonishing animal families on the planet, the dinosaurs. In this peaceful world, the first true dinosaurs were still very modest and inconspicuous. They weren't giants immediately conquering the world. On the contrary, their sizes were humble, and their forms simple and uncomplicated. These small creatures began their history as modest hunters and foragers, exploring the new possibilities that the changed world opened up to them. One such early dinosaur was Eoraptor, light and fast. Its name translates to morning plunderer, and indeed, it seemed to be the beginning of a new era of life. Only about a meter long, it was flexible and nimble, like the wind sweeping across the plains and forests. Eoraptor was not a majestic monster. It was more like an agile hunter, adept at surviving among the dangers of its time. Alongside Eoraptor lived Herrerasaurus, larger and more powerful, yet still far from the gigantic sizes that dinosaurs would later achieve. Its length could reach 4 meters, and it was one of the first large predators among these ancient creatures. Herrerasaurus was one of those who gradually ascended the food chain, learning to use its strong jaws and sharp teeth to hunt and defend its territory. These two early representatives, Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus, were like the first steps on a long evolutionary ladder leading to the majestic dinosaurs that would rule the world millions of years later. They lived in an era when Earth was just beginning its new chapter after great upheavals, and every small victory, every survival, was important. The climate in the Triassic was warm and dry, and most of the land consisted of vast deserts and rocky expanses, interspersed with only sparse rivers and lakes. But it was precisely in such conditions that new niches appeared, new opportunities for those who could adapt. Small dinosaurs learned to move faster, became more agile, and their bodies more efficient. Over time, these early dinosaurs began to divide into two major lineages, though this process was not yet final and clear. On one side, theropods emerged, bipedal, mostly carnivorous dinosaurs, possessing sharp teeth and quick movements. They were true hunters, masters of survival, and their legacy would continue for millions of years. On the other side, the ancestors of sauropodomorphs arose, future giants, with long necks and small heads, who would later become mighty herbivorous dinosaurs. In the Triassic period, they were still small and modest, but they already carried the traits that would allow them to become the largest land animals in the history of the planet. This process of division was slow and gradual, like a river that flows unhurriedly, carving stone in its path. Dinosaurs were not yet the dominant creatures. Other groups of reptiles lived alongside them, some of whom were their competitors. But it was in this quiet and unhurried competition for survival that the strength and endurance were born that would eventually allow dinosaurs to take their place at the top of the world. The first dinosaurs were an astonishing combination of simplicity and potential. They were still far from the grandeur of Jurassic and Cretaceous giants, but they already carried the seeds of that future. Their modest bodies, flexible movements, and initial hunting skills all gradually formed an amazing evolutionary puzzle. The Triassic world was like a canvas on which nature carefully drew the first lines of a new painting. Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus were like the first strokes of an artist creating a grandiose work that would take its place in history. During this time, Earth lived its unhurried life, giving its inhabitants space to develop. The climate changed smoothly. Occasionally, rains appeared, filling rivers with water, and vegetation gradually covered the deserts. All of this was created to allow new forms of life to appear and survive. And so, among these soft and gentle conditions, the first true dinosaurs slowly but surely moved forward, paving their way in history. They did not rush, did not hurry to conquer the world by force. They did it smoothly, naturally, as if nature itself was guiding their path. And in this tranquility and contemplativeness of the Triassic world, the great history of dinosaurs was born, a history of endurance, adaptation, and changes that would eventually revolutionize the understanding of the living world. The world lives in the rhythm of change, and every transition is like a slow breath of nature, calm but inevitable. The time of the Triassic, slowly dissolving into the planet's memory, gives way to a new dawn, the Jurassic era. This was a time when the ancient world seemed to hold its breath and prepare for a major turning point, for changes that would forever alter the course of life on Earth. The end of the Triassic was not calm and quiet. It brought with it a whirlwind of changes, and at the same time, trials. Earth, which had only recently recovered from the great Permian extinction, once again found itself at the epicenter of large-scale cataclysms. This period is marked by a new mass extinction, an event that seemed to cleanse nature's page, removing those who could not adapt to the new conditions. At this moment in history, when life was once again experiencing a crisis, many groups of animals that once competed for a place in the sun disappeared. Among them were large reptiles and various amphibians that in the Triassic fought with dinosaurs for dominance. Their disappearance became a kind of liberation for those who managed to survive. For dinosaurs, slowly but surely rising to the top of the ecosystem. Imagine how the Earth, as if taking a deep and calm breath, frees up new spaces. The ecological niches that appeared after the extinction are like empty rooms in a large house, into which one can enter and settle. Dinosaurs, who were still very young and modest, gradually occupied these free places, transforming from humble hunters and gatherers into new rulers of the earth. This process was not swift, but smooth, like a river that flows slowly but surely, eroding banks and creating new paths. With each year, with each new population, dinosaurs became stronger, more diverse, and more confident. At this time, the first large predators already appeared, mighty theropods who over millions of years would turn into formidable hunters, about whom legends and films would be told. These predators were not just strong. They were adapted for fast hunting, with sharp teeth, strong legs, and keen vision. Among them were already the ancestors of those who would later become tyrannosaurs, some of the most fearsome predators in Earth's history. In parallel with predators, the first large herbivores also developed. They became giants capable of eating huge amounts of plants that grew in abundance in the Jurassic lands. Their bodies gradually increased, their necks lengthened, allowing them to reach high tree branches and even the very tops of dense forests. This was an important stage. It was thanks to them that ecosystems became more complex and stable, because they played the role of peacemakers, curbing the growth of vegetation and creating conditions for other forms of life. Dinosaurs not only grew in size, they also learned to live in new conditions, from dry plains to humid forests, from mountain slopes to riverbanks. Their adaptability and diversity were the key to future success, but the path to dominance was still long and full of trials. These changes were like a slow dance of nature, quiet, measured, filled with anticipation and hidden power. The world changed, but it changed softly, unhurriedly, allowing each species to find its place and become part of the great picture of life. Sometimes one can imagine how a quiet wind slides across ancient plains, rustling the leaves of giant ferns and cycads, and in the distance, rare cries of the first large predators are heard, as if reminding that life continues and changes. These sounds were not evil, but a symbol of struggle and survival, a quiet but constant force that leads nature forward. The Triassic-Jurassic period was like a bridge between the past and the future, between epochs when life was still, searching for itself, and when it was already ready for great achievements. This bridge was built of patience, of long millions of years, during which every little thing mattered. And it was on this bridge, in silence and tranquility, that the great history of dinosaurs began, a history of struggle, survival, and triumph. They were not yet the masters of the planet, but they already felt the taste of power and opportunities that would eventually turn them into legends. With each sunrise and sunset, with each climate change, with each appearance of a new species, dinosaurs wrote their own history, a history that continues today in our dreams and scientific discoveries. The world smoothly changes. The twilight of the Triassic gives way to the first light of the Jurassic period, as if the Earth, covered in shadow, finally emerges into the morning warmth. The great extinction has passed, and the planet, wounded but stubborn, begins its long work of recovery. The Jurassic period, lasting about 56 million years, became a time of unprecedented flourishing of life. The atmosphere changed. The air became softer, the climate warmer and more humid. Harsh, arid expanses disappeared, giving way to soft rains and dense thickets of ancient ferns and conifers. In these lush expanses, nature found a new harmony, where giants reigned. Sauropods, long-necked giants, truly became the embodiment of the Jurassic era. Among them, Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. Their enormous bodies, long necks, and tails stretched upwards and outwards, as if the forests themselves were carved to their scale. These herbivorous titans roamed the plains and forested valleys, leaving wide paths behind them, trampling the soil with their massive limbs. Diplodocus, elongated like a string, were true masters of low-level foraging. Their heads barely rose above the ground. They glided through dense thickets, stripping ferns and horsetails. Scientists suggest that they might have gathered in herds, like modern elephants, protecting their young in the center. Although such data is based only on the distribution of fossil tracks, the image of a peacefully wandering herd of sauropods inspires the imagination. Brachiosaurus, unlike their relatives, were tall, like living towers. Their front legs were longer than their hind legs, allowing their necks to reach higher than any other. They grazed in the upper canopy of ancient coniferous forests, not competing with Diplodocus for food. Together they shared the world, not competing, but complementing each other, an example of natural balance. While some sought food in the treetops, other inhabitants of the sky soared above the ancient landscape. Pterosaurs, flying reptiles that dominated the sky, spread their membranous wings on the wind. These were not the ancestors of birds, as is sometimes mistakenly believed, but a completely separate branch of flying archosaurs. Their bodies were light, their heads elongated, and their jaws often studded with teeth, tools for catching fish and small terrestrial animals. The true ancestors of birds were other creatures, dinosaurs, especially some representatives of theropods. It was in this branch of nature that the potential for future flight lay hidden, which would manifest tens of millions of years later. But for now, in the Jurassic era, flight belonged to pterosaurs, and they soared in the orange sunset, gliding between the clouds as if part of the sky itself. Below, on the ground, theropods began to strengthen their dominance as the main predators of the era. One of the most famous among them was Allosaurus. This predator, up to 9 meters long, had dumb, powerful jaws, blade-like teeth, and strong hind limbs. It was fast, as far as its mass allowed, and probably hunted both alone and in groups. But evidence of collective hunting is still a subject of scientific debate. Allosaurs could attack large sauropods, especially young or sick ones. Their jaws were not designed for crushing bones like modern crocodiles, but cutting tendons and powerful blows could weaken the victim. A battle between an Allosaurus and an adult Diplodocus might have been a rare but spectacular sight, a clash of brute force and lightning-fast attack. The Jurassic period's ecosystems were characterized by their richness and stability. Sauropods served as large herbivores. Theropods were the dominant predators, while smaller creatures like ceratosaurs, ornithopods, insects, primitive mammals, and tiny reptiles scurried across the land. In the water, ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs splashed, ruling the seas where ammonites and belemnites once swam. Food, energy, and life circulated through these ancient systems, forming complex connections. Everything was interconnected. A fallen tree provided shelter for a lizard. The death of a sauropod fed dozens of small scavengers. Even an old pterosaur nest could become home to a mammal. This was a time of harmony on scales difficult to imagine. The Jurassic world lived in a rhythm honed by time. Day turned to night, seasons changed without haste, and every raindrop, every blade of grass found its place in this ancient symphony. As the Jurassic era progressed, nature experimented. New species appeared and vanished. Some theropods became smaller, developed feathers, perhaps initially for warmth, and later for display. Others, conversely, grew in size. Some developed claws, while others' teeth lengthened. In this slow but inexorable race, preparation for the next great era was taking shape. But for now, everything remained calm. Sauropods continued their procession. Across the plains, pterosaurs soared over a sea of ferns. Allosaurs stalked in the shadows. The Jurassic world was full of life, but its rhythm was not frantic. It was steady, like the breathing of a sleeping giant. This was an age of giants, but also a time of equilibrium, and although the distant future promised change, at this moment, Earth knew peace. Thus concludes this chapter of the ancient book, paving the way for a new story, a story of separation, evolution, and transformations that would one day lead to the appearance of feathers, wings, and the first flight. After the magnificent flourishing of the Jurassic giants discussed in the previous chapter, we'll briefly step away from the bustling world of dinosaurs to immerse ourselves in the very fabric of time, in the landscapes, winds and foliage that surrounded them. Imagine this world as if we are travelers in time, observing ancient Earth with its unique beauty. Close your eyes. Breathe calmly. Let your imagination transport you back 200 million years, to the very beginning of the Jurassic period. The supercontinent Pangaea hadn't fully broken apart yet. It stretched out like an enormous stone slab, connecting almost all modern continents. Its outlines were different, but the forms were slowly spreading under the influence of forces hidden deep within the planet. Magma was already seeping through the crust's fissures, forming future oceans. But for now, it's a single, vast world, dry and hot at its center, wet and rich with life at its edges. A humid climate, warm and even, covered most of the surface. There were no glaciers, no frosty winters. Seasons were smoothed, like gentle waves on a calm pond. In the mornings, vapor descended into the valleys, a thick, sweetish mist rising from primeval swamps and lowlands. The air was filled with the scents of resin, damp leaves, and moist earth. Rain here was not uncommon, especially at the continent's edges. But it wasn't a downpour or a storm. It was a monotonous, almost soothing moisture, dripping from evergreen branches. The forest whispered, under its touch, and the drops fell into muddy but living puddles, reflecting a prehistoric sky not so far from our own. Moving through the undergrowth, we notice that the landscape is nothing like modern one. There are no grassy plains, no wide fields of flowers. Grasses, as we know them, hadn't appeared yet. Instead, the ground was covered by mosses, horsetails, and ferns. Some of them reached human height, forming almost fairy tale thickets. Their deeply dissected, emerald green leaves seemed like living beings, swaying with the slightest movement of air. Ferns draped over slopes, hung from cliffs, and spread in the shade of enormous trees. And the trees themselves were gymnosperms, araucarias, cycads, ginkgos. Their needles were dense, dark green, sometimes with a bluish tint. They reached skyward like stone towers, topped with spiral crowns. The bark of these trees was rough and smelled of resin. If you touched it, your fingers would remain sticky, as if you had disturbed the planet's very memory. The ground underfoot was soft and springy. It was full of life. Everywhere, there were tracks. Here, the three-toed print of a small dinosaur, barely larger than a turkey. And here, a chain of tracks from an ancient turtle, slowly crossing a stream. The tracks didn't fade quickly. The ground in these forests was moist, viscous, as if made of caked clay. In the sky, it wasn't the blue vault of today. It was rather pale gray, pearlescent, often covered with feathery clouds. The sun glided across it softly, not scorching, but as if muffled, like watching it through a thin veil. Gusts of wind carried the scent of distant eruptions. Somewhere to the south, rifts were slowly opening, heralding the future Tethys Ocean. The earth here wasn't stable. Occasionally, tremors occurred, and drops fell from the trees, not from rain, but from the unrest within the planet's own body. Through a dinosaur's eyes, this world looked different. We are travelers in its body. Our necks are long, allowing us to push aside crowns. We walk slowly through the dense undergrowth, feeling the ground yield under the weight of our paws. Our vision isn't as sharp, but it's sensitive to movement, and we are always alert. In the distance, a cry sounds. It's not a bird. It's the call of another lizard, maybe a predatory theropod, hidden somewhere in the bushes. We freeze, then slowly retreat, listening. The Jurassic world, a world of equilibrium. Chaos doesn't reign here, but peace isn't absolute either. Every creature is part of a network, where each has its place and its moment. Small bipedal dinosaurs, like Scutellosaurus, dart among the bushes, rooting in the ground for roots. Their bodies are covered with primitive down-like structures, the beginnings of future feathers. They are fast and attentive. Every sound is a signal to them. Further on, among the ferns, the long body of a monitor lizard-like creature stirs, almost imperceptibly. It's not a dinosaur, but one of their neighbors, perhaps a lizard or a primitive crocodile relative. Life teems in the water. Small bodies of water swarm with insects, ancestors of dragonflies, whose wings are transparent and long. They fly unhurriedly, their fluttering reminiscent of the very breath of the forest. Larvae swim in stagnant water, among duckweed and aquatic ferns. Sometimes an amphibian's back, an ancestor of salamanders, breaks the surface film, emerging to breathe the moist air. The Jurassic world is astonishingly full. It doesn't bustle with activity, but in every corner there's the breath of time. Everything grows slowly, steadily. Even when a predator attacks, it's not a burst of cruelty but part of the overall rhythm. It feeds to survive, and those who escape run to live on. Everything is in equilibrium, like a well-tuned symphony. When night falls, the forest fills with soft light. The moon, another ancient witness to life on Earth, bathes the plains and mountains in silver. The ferns glow faintly, as if holding the reflection of the past day. Insects chirp, creating a lulling chorus. Some dinosaurs settle down for the night, others go hunting. Small predators become active in the darkness, their eyes reflecting the starlight. And among the trees, you can glimpse the silhouette of a brachiosaurus, slowly shifting its weight from foot to foot. It isn't afraid of the night. It's too large to be afraid. The Jurassic world is unlike ours. There are no people, no homes, no roads. Only pristine nature and its breath. This was a time when Earth was young, when everything was just beginning. But in that beginning, future life was already embedded. In the ferns, in the dinosaur eggs, in the chirping of an ancient dragonfly. And as you, tired, lie with closed eyes, allowing the voice of this story to dissolve into the silence, know this. This world still lives within us, in every tree, in every breath of wind, in every dream of distant times. Just as it was then, a soft mist descends upon the earth, enfolding it in the embrace of sleep. Good night, time traveler. The warm air of the Jurassic forest is still, like a blanket stretched over thickets of ancient horsetails and ferns. A light mist creeps along the ground, enveloping the trunks of tree-like cycads, like the breath of a world just awakening. The sun is still low, and its light gently breaks through the foliage, casting long golden shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a cry rings out, short and clicking, one of the morning calls of a world that has already begun its daily symphony of life. In the deep shadow of this forest, among roots and stones, a small creature moves. It is alert, but not afraid. Its body is covered with thin, soft filaments, the ancestors of what would one day become a feather. Barely visible downy fibers sway in the wind, catching the slightest changes in temperature and air direction. This is the beginning of a new chapter in the history of life on Earth. Feathers didn't appear suddenly. They were the result of a long journey. It all began with skin, a living barrier between the organism and the outside world. For reptiles, skin had long provided protection from drying out, from sunlight, from enemies. But some creatures went further. Their skin began to produce special structures made of keratin, a strong protein that makes up claws, scales, horns, and hair. And one day these structures began to branch, thinly and elegantly, like the rudiments of a feather. At first, it was just down, thin, unbranched fibers growing over the body. They were useless for flight, but they already played an important role. They retained heat. This was especially important for small dinosaurs living in conditions where nights could be cold and days hot. Like a blanket, these primitive feathers helped maintain a constant body temperature. And this became the first step. Imagine a morning when a small theropod, let's say a dilong, a predator just over a meter long, emerges from its burrow. Its movements are cautious, its head turned to catch sounds, its tail held taut. It pauses in a sunlit patch where warmth caresses its body. Its primitive plumage, more like fur than feathers, catches the first rays. This isn't just protection. This is life. This is energy. Over time, feathers became more complex. They began to branch, becoming symmetrical and then asymmetrical. A central shaft appeared, from which thin barbs extended. Some feathers became stiffer, others longer. A caudipteryx, living approximately 125 million years ago, already had vivid fan-like feathers on its tail and arms. It couldn't fly, but perhaps it didn't aspire to. These feathers served other purposes. They were part of body language. In the forest, sounds are important, but movements are no less significant. Fluffed feathers are a sign. They can be raised, splayed, folded. It's a way of saying, I'm here, I'm strong, I'm ready to defend myself, or I'm worth noticing. In some species, such feathers were mottled and bright. Scientists have studied the remnants of microscopic melanosomes in fossils and concluded some dinosaurs had black, reddish, and even brightly colored areas on their bodies. Let's imagine another character, Anchiornis, a light, graceful theropod the size of a pigeon who lived in what is now China. It was not only covered in dense feathers but also had long feathers even on its legs. Its wings were symmetrical and unlikely to support flight, but perhaps it glided from branch to branch, or as some partridges do today, used its wings for sharp maneuvers while running. It was graceful and possibly colorful, with black and white stripes and reddish patches on its head. A living reminder that nature loves not only practicality, but also beauty. Feathers became a new instrument not just for thermoregulation and display, but also for protection. In some species, feathers covered not only the body but also areas around the eyes, helping to wick away moisture and reflect sun glare. Large predators, like Uteranus, up to 9 meters long, had dense plumage. Despite its size, it retained heat, possibly suggesting it had an accelerated metabolism and perhaps cared for its offspring. New scenes appear in the ancient forest. A female feathered theropod sits by her nest, carefully turning her eggs. She covers them with her body, fluffing her feathers to create a secure cocoon of warmth and safety. Her breathing is even, her eyes half closed. Nearby, the male doesn't stray far. Sometimes he brings food, sometimes he stands guard. In a world where caring for offspring can mean the survival of the species, feathers play an increasingly important role. And in another corner of the forest, young theropods. Their movements are clumsy but already swift. One of them climbs onto a boulder, spreads its tiny, still weak wings, not for flight, but as if by instinct. The wind touches its feathers. This gesture is not yet rational but instinctive. Evolution speaks through body language long before words. Feathers became more than just a part of the body. They became part of behavior, part of identity. In the morning, feathered dinosaurs fluffed up to warm themselves. During the day, they hid in the shade, folding their feathers, reducing their volume and conserving moisture. During rain, they shook off drops. And during mating season, they put on entire performances. Plumage rustled, flexed, caught the light. This was the first theater of prehistoric Earth. It's important to understand that not all feathers were alike. Some were fluffy and soft, others stiff and long. There were even dinosaurs with ribbon feathers, resembling wide brushes. Perhaps they served as flags, for signals at a distance. Or maybe they helped with maneuvers, similar to stabilizers, on an airplane. And amidst all this diversity, almost imperceptibly, the idea of flight was born. Still unconscious, still unrealized, but feathers were already becoming ready for a new function. Their structure, their lightness, their flexibility, all of this was the basis of future wings. Dusk caught the ancient forest in a special light. Sunbeams pierced through the moist haze, coloring the air a soft orange. In the treetops, the bird calls subsided, and on the ground, in the shadows, feathered dinosaurs sought shelter. One of them, perhaps a Yuanchuavis, settles onto a thick branch. It carefully retracts its wings, turns its head to check for predators. All is calm. It slowly yawns. Its feathers muffle sound and retain heat. It breathes evenly, its eyes gradually closing. In this state of sleep, time is seamless. Its body bears the imprint of millions of years of evolution. Its feathers are not just decoration. They are a story written on the surface of a living creature. A story that began as a way to keep warm, became a language of communication. A shield, a banner, and one day would become a wing. For now, all is calm. The night forest fills with the chirping of insects and rare rustles. In this world, full of life, creatures with feathers prepare for sleep. But their descendants, in an unknown future, will soar into the sky. The feather, born as a downy fiber on a lizard's back, will become the support for flight, part of a great history in which the sky will open up to terrestrial life. And as we, lulled by the breath of the Jurassic forest, close our eyes, a soft shadow passes from feathers to wings, from land to air, because the next step is already near. It begins not with a jump, but with the gentle flutter of a feather in the evening. Wind. Slowly, like the earth's breath, epochs passed. After the long Jurassic reign, when dense forests and ancient oceans teemed with life, the planet changed again. The Cretaceous period didn't arrive suddenly. It flowed smoothly from the past, like dawn through fog. The Earth was reorganizing. Continents, once united into one supercontinent, Pangaea, were cracking at the seams, like dried tree bark. Pangaea began to break apart back in the Triassic, but by the middle of the Cretaceous period, it had finally fragmented into two enormous land masses, northern Laurasia and southern Gondwana. These giants began their slow but inexorable movement away from each other. Somewhere between them, the Atlantic and Indian Oceans were forming, flooding the newly created edges of water and creating new climates, new horizons. This great division was the impetus for an incredible evolutionary leap. Geographical isolation, a powerful mechanism, divided the world's inhabitants into those who ended up in the north and those who remained in the south. From then on, the fates of these creatures diverged. Just as dreams scatter in different directions from a single origin, so did dinosaur evolution move along many new paths. In Laurasia, stretching across modern North America, Europe, and parts of Asia, forms that would later become true icons of the Cretaceous period dominated. Here, on sun-drenched plains, herds of hadrosaurs, duck-billed herbivores whose broad beaks resembled those of ducks, emerged. They were intelligent, social, and likely possessed a complex system of signals. Their skulls were often adorned with growths and crests, which scientists suggest these dinosaurs might have used to produce sounds, communicating with each other like musical instruments. Alongside them walked ankylosaurs, armored giants covered in bony plates, and armed with massive tail clubs. True tanks of the Cretaceous world, they lived a leisurely life, feeding on low-growing vegetation. Their bodies were like ancient bronze forge creations, heavy, rough, but surprisingly elegant in their protection. Ceratopsians, the horned dinosaurs, were also here. Some, like Protoceratops, were the size of a sheep, while others, like the legendary Triceratops, reached the size of a car. Their horns and bony frills were not only for defense, but also, perhaps, objects of pride, courtship, strength, and status. They might have engaged in ritualistic duels, like bulls, crashing heads and trumpeting into the sunset. Meanwhile, Gondwana, stretching across the future South America, Africa, India, Antarctica, and Australia, told its own stories. Here, titanosaurs reigned supreme, the largest creatures ever to walk the earth. Argentinosaurus, Patagoteton, Dreadnoughtus, their names echo like distant thuds on the ground. They were truly gigantic, up to 30 meters long, weighing more than a Boeing aircraft. Their necks stretched into the sky, and their steps left indentations in the soil that, millions of years later, would become fossilized tracks. In the shadows of these giants roamed predators adapted to different conditions. Abelisaurs, theropods that replaced predators like tyrannosaurs in Laurasia, were lighter, faster, but no less dangerous. Majungasaurus from Madagascar and Carnotaurus from South America were graceful and deadly, with short but powerful jaws. Australia and Antarctica, connected in the southern latitudes, were special places. They were closer to the polar regions, and the climate here differed from the rest of the Cretaceous. Here, forms adapted to long winters and seasonal cold developed. Dinosaurs like Leia had large eyes, possibly for better vision in the polar night. While direct evidence of feathers hasn't been found, it's quite possible given that their relatives were feathered. Plumage could have served not only for warmth, but also for display, even in the coldest and most remote corners of the ancient world. The world was becoming greener. Flowering plants, angiosperms, began to conquer the planet. They reproduced rapidly, creating colorful, fragrant landscapes. Along with them, insects thrived. Bees, butterflies, and beetles appeared, many of which specialized in pollination. This was coevolution. Flowers needed insects, and insects needed flowers. The world became more refined, complex, and fragrant. The air, for the first time, was filled not only with the scent of ancient ferns, but also with pollen, nectar, and floral sweetness. Life in the seas also teemed. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-like reptiles, began to die out approximately 93 million years ago, giving way to other forms. Oceans were overrun by plesiosaurs, especially the long-necked Elasmosaurus. By the end of the Cretaceous, the dominant marine predators were mosasaurs, mighty lizards outwardly resembling giant monitor lizards. The Mosasaurus, known to many from cinema, truly existed and hunted everything in its path: fish, ammonites, and other marine reptiles. And in the sky, a parallel procession was unfolding. Birds, which had appeared in the Jurassic period, were by this time represented by diverse forms. Some were small, living in forests, feeding on insects. Others were larger, capable of sustained flight. Some bird lineages continued to retain primitive features: teeth, long tails, claws on their wings. But with each million years, these features disappeared. Birds became lighter, their feathers more specialized. Bones became hollow. All for the sake of flight. They occupied new niches: aerial, coastal, nocturnal. Some might have already begun calling to each other in the twilight, as modern owls or cormorants do. And amidst all this grandeur, amidst the changing epochs, the movement of tectonic plates, the blossoming of flowers, and the conquest of the sky, lived creatures for whom everything happening was simply life. They didn't know that epochs were passing. They simply ate, hunted, mated, and cared for their offspring. Their world was here and now. They were children of their era, and humanity, tens of millions of years later, would excavate bones, study fossils, debate clades and phylogeny. But this Cretaceous world, it already was. It lived, breathed, sang with its own voice, full of sounds, smells, the crackling of wings, the cries of southern theropods, and the rustling of foliage swaying beneath the feet of herbivorous giants. And all of this was just another page in the endless book of life. When the continents finally drift apart, and the ancient Pangean mosaic transforms into the recognizable geography of the future world, a new era in Earth's history begins. The sea slowly encroaches upon the land, creating shallow waters, lagoons, and endless coastlines. New forests emerge, rich with ferns and conifers, overgrown with flowers and full of life. This world is no longer what it was in the Jurassic, and, with this world, its heart changes. Its predators. Those who once ruled the Jurassic landscapes, such as the formidable allosaurs, gradually fade from the evolutionary scene. They were magnificent, certainly, but changes in climate, environment, and competition create new conditions. The world demands new predators, and nature responds. From the east and west, from the north and south, from new ecosystems, three branches of new rulers arise. Three lineages, each with its own hunting style, physique, and way of life. Each, in its own way, the pinnacle of predatory evolution during the Cretaceous period. The first of these are Carcharodontosaurs. Carcharodontosaurs, titans of the continental south. Their name translates to shark-toothed lizards, and it's not a metaphor. The teeth of these creatures truly resembled cutting blades, capable of tearing flesh and breaking bones. These predators ruled Gondwana on the southern continents, including the territories of modern South America, Africa, and even Australia. Imagine a Carcharodontosaurus, a colossal dinosaur over 13 meters long. Its massive body rises above a coastal plain, bathed in the golden light of the Cretaceous sun. The air smells of salty water and warm dust. In the distance, pterosaurs cry out, flying over the lagoon. It moves slowly, confidently, feeling the vibrations of the earth. Its nostrils flare. It has caught the scent of prey. Somewhere ahead, a herd of iguanodons. It won't rush them headlong. It waits. The strength of Carcharodontosaurus isn't in speed, but in suddenness and the power of its strike. One precise lunge, one bite, and it has already won. These predators might have lived alone or in pairs. Some paleontologists suggest that juveniles were more mobile and hunted differently to avoid competing with adults. This is a strategy we see in modern crocodiles as well. Spinosaurus, lords of aquatic hunting. But not all hunters of the Cretaceous world sought prey on land. In the humid and swampy ecosystems of northern Africa lived another giant, Spinosaurus. It looked strange, almost alien. A narrow, elongated snout, like a crocodile's. A tall sail on its back, formed by elongated vertebral spines. Toes with hook-like claws and hind limbs shorter than those of terrestrial predators. Everything in its anatomy spoke of one thing. It belonged to the water. Imagine the morning bank of a wide river. Mist hovers over the water's surface, reflecting the crimson sun. And then, a quiet splash. A massive body rises from the water. It's Spinosaurus. Its jaws are open, a fish quivering between its teeth. It makes no sound. Only the rush of water dripping from its scaly hide disturbs the morning silence. Spinosaurus was the first fossil-known dinosaur adapted to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. It was a hunter of aquatic prey, but could also come ashore to fight rivals or defend its territory. Its hunting strategy was unique. It didn't chase, but waited. It could hide in the reeds, sensing vibrations in the water. One quick lunge, and the fish was in its teeth. Sometimes it hunted large amphibians or even smaller dinosaurs that came to drink. Tyrannosaurs, kings of the north. At the other end of the Cretaceous world, in Laurasia, in the territories of modern North America and Asia, a third type of predator gradually emerged. Initially inconspicuous, even modest, they spent tens of millions of years gaining strength and mass, and by the end of the Cretaceous, they became the undisputed kings of the north. These were the tyrannosaurs. For a long time they were small, nimble hunters, a couple of meters long with long arms and a light body. But time passed. Evolution forged them from generation to generation. Their skulls grew. Their jaws became more powerful. Their bodies lengthened. Their forelimbs shortened, becoming almost useless. But all of this was compensated by incredibly powerful hind limbs, huge neck muscles, and teeth the size of bananas. Tyrannosaurus rex, the pinnacle of this lineage, one of the most recognizable dinosaurs in history. But behind this image lies not only strength but also strategy. It wasn't just a brute. It was an intelligent hunter, with a well-developed sense of smell, stereoscopic vision, and, as research shows, possibly even a social structure. Some hypotheses suggest that young tyrannosaurs might have hunted in packs, like modern lions or wolves, and adults finished off prey, using their massive heads like a battering ram. Imagine such a landscape. On an open plain under the evening light, a T-Rex raises its head and freezes. In the distance, a lowing sound echoes. A herd of ceratopsians moves towards a watering hole. The Tyrannosaurus doesn't rush immediately. It knows that one wrong step and the prey will be gone. It waits, and only when the wind shifts, when the shadow falls at the right angle, does it launch its attack. Hunting strategies, the art of survival. These three lineages of predators, Carcharodontosaurs, Spinosaurs, and Tyrannosaurs, weren't just competitors. They were the embodiment of three different survival strategies in a changing world. One relied on brute force and territorial control. Another on agility and life by the water. The third on intelligence and adaptability, using every chance, every mistake of the prey. And in this diversity, there's something amazing. All of them are the result of long millions of years of selection. None of the forms is better than another. They are simply different answers to one question: how to survive and hunt in a world full of dangers. Even their skeletons speak of this. The Spinosaurus's skull is light and elongated. The Carcharodontosaurus's is heavy, with serrated teeth. And the Tyrannosaurus's is massive, with bones strengthened to absorb impacts. Life between hunts. But even the most formidable predators don't hunt all the time. They also had their quiet hours. When the heat subsided, when the wind carried the smell of rain, when the sun dipped towards the horizon, they rested. Imagine a huge Carcharodontosaurus lying in the shade of an acacia tree. Its rib cage slowly rises and falls. Somewhere nearby, small dinosaur chicks fledge from a nest, but it pays them no mind. It's sated. It yawns, opening its jaws wide. A flock of flying reptiles circles above a swamp, and in the distance, a splash is heard. Perhaps a Spinosaurus is hunting there. And somewhere far to the north, in dense coniferous forests, under a blue sky and gusting wind, a young Tyrannosaurus follows a trail. It's not the largest yet, but it already knows. The world belongs to those who learn every day. Its eyes gleam. In the air, the smell of life, and of the hunt. And so, millions of years passed. Each predator found its place. Every day in the Cretaceous, world was filled with movement, sounds, and smells. They lived, fought, hunted, and slept. This was their world, but nothing lasts forever. And on the horizon, clouds are already gathering. The global ocean is rising. Volcanoes are awakening. And one day, a light brighter than the sun will appear in the sky, and everything will change. But that's the story for the next night. For now, close your eyes. Imagine the soft wind swaying tall grasses. Somewhere in the distance, a Carcharodontosaurus disappears into the twilight. A Spinosaurus freezes by the water, like a reflection from another world. A Tyrannosaurus, massive and silent, gazes at the stars. And you are among them. In this world where time flows slowly, where life resonates with the rhythm of the Earth's heart. Good night. In the stillness of the ancient forests and boundless plains of the Mesozoic era, when the first tentative rays of sun gently touched the foliage, unfolded a story not only of the struggle for life but also of astonishing intelligence, complex emotions, and social bonds. The world of dinosaurs was not merely a stage for battles and hunts, but a living organism filled with nuances of communication, care, and interaction. Let us immerse ourselves in this quiet, almost mysterious side of their existence. The minds, feelings, and behaviors that make us look at these ancient giants from a new, warmer, and deeper perspective. Brain and sensory capabilities of dinosaurs. A window into their inner world. When we think of dinosaurs, images of enormous, fearsome, and ruthless lizards usually come to mind. However, within their skulls lay a whole world. A world of thoughts, sensations, and perceptions. Over the past few decades, scientists have studied fossilized skulls, leaving behind traces of the brain, known as endocasts. These forms provide astonishing insight into how brain structures developed in different species. Especially interesting is the fact that many dinosaurs had well-developed sensory areas of the brain, those parts responsible for sight, hearing, smell, and balance. For example, in theropods like the Tyrannosaurus, large olfactory bulbs can be observed. This suggests that their sense of smell was vitally important to them, perhaps helping them find prey and communicate with their kin. Their vision, as studies of their eye socket structure show, was sharp and capable of detecting the slightest movements, making them formidable hunters. The dinosaurs' sensory system was not just a set of tools for survival, but also a means for exchanging information and building social connections. Nature seemed to whisper to them, "Heed the world around you, learn to understand signals, and respond to them." The level of intelligence in dromaeosaurids and herbivores. The mystery of their inner world. Dromaeosaurids are among the most enigmatic and intelligent dinosaurs. These small, fast predators, possessing feathers and sharp minds, behaved differently from the cumbersome giants of their time. Their brains were proportionally larger compared to their body size, which usually indicates a higher level of intelligence. Scientists suggest that dromaeosaurids might have hunted in groups, planned their actions, showed cunning, and even had elements of complex social behavior. Imagine these animals moving quietly and cohesively through thick undergrowth, communicating with each other using sounds, gestures, and perhaps even visual signals. Their hunt was not just instinct, but a well-thought-out strategy. But intelligence was not unique to predators. Herbivorous dinosaurs, such as iguanodons and hadrosaurs, also possessed abilities that allowed them to survive in a constantly changing world. Their brains may not have been as large as those of dromaeosaurids, but they were tuned to process information important for social life, recognizing kin, coordinating within herds, defending against predators, and caring for offspring. Given this, one can imagine how hundreds of herbivores, moving together across the plains, communicated with each other, possibly through sounds, movements, and even scents. In their community, each had its place, and survival depended on cohesion and mutual aid. Possible signs of pack hunting and parental care. Secrets of dinosaur family life. Evidence of dinosaur social behavior is found in the most unexpected places, in the sandy layers of ancient lakes, in fossilized nests, and in tracks preserved for millions of years. One of the most intriguing discoveries has been the group finds of dromaeosaurid remains moving in the same direction, like a hunting pack. This fact suggests that these predators could act cooperatively, which significantly increased their effectiveness and chances of a successful hunt. But dinosaur social bonds extended far beyond hunting. The discovery of numerous nests with eggs and juveniles shows that parental care was an integral part of their lives. In some cases, scientists found the remains of adults next to nests, hinting at the parents' involvement in incubating eggs and protecting their young from dangers. Particularly amazing is the story of Maiasaura, whose name translates to "good mother." This herbivorous animal apparently lived in large colonies, where adults cared for their young, feeding them, protecting them, and teaching them. Such behavior can be compared to the social structures of modern birds and mammals, where shared, parental care increases the survival rate of the entire species. Social structures and communication. A timeless language. Imagine a quiet Mesozoic dawn, a fresh breeze gently swaying the crowns of ancient trees, and a herd of dinosaurs slowly moving through the valley. Not a word is spoken between them, but many invisible signals are conveyed in every glance, movement, and sound. Their communication is a language, complex and multifaceted, passed down through generations. Although we can only guess at the exact forms of communication, by analogy with modern reptiles and birds, one can assume the presence of many sounds, clicks, calls, whistles, as well as expressive facial mimicry, and even changes in skin and feather coloration. In the twilight, these signals might have served as warnings of predators or invitations to a joint hunt. Such social interactions required a high level of intelligence and emotional responsiveness. This was not just a group of animals living side by side. It was a complex society with internal rules, roles, and mutual care. Reflections of ancient truths in the modern world. When we look at birds fluttering in our garden, it's hard to imagine that their distant ancestors were mighty dinosaurs that inhabited the Earth millions of years ago. However, it is precisely through the study of their intelligence and social behavior that we can find a bridge between the past and the present. Today's birds, from sparrows to eagles, continue the traditions laid down by their Mesozoic ancestors: communication, parental care, and the ability to interact with the surrounding world. This understanding fills us with awe and respect, making us reflect on how delicate and fragile life is, and how much we have in common with these ancient creatures. Their wisdom and instincts live in every rustle of leaves and every bird's trill, reminding us of the endless cycle of life on our planet, the serenity of the ancient world, and our inner journey. By immersing ourselves in this meditative story of dinosaur intelligence and social connections, we feel as if we ourselves become part of the ancient world, a quiet world filled with subtle nuances, where every sound and movement meant much more than it seemed at first glance. In this serenity lies a lesson for us, a lesson of patience, attentiveness, and deep connection with the surrounding world. Allow yourself for a moment to close your eyes and imagine yourself among these ancient creatures. You feel a gentle breeze, hear the distant sounds of nature, feel the warmth of the sun. The world around you is filled with life, intelligence, and care, and you are part of this wonderful dance of existence. With each breath in and out, feel how peace fills you, how the wisdom of the past gradually penetrates your consciousness, carrying away worries and bustle. Allow yourself to dissolve into this tranquility, feeling unity with a world that continues and develops, despite millennia. Thus, the intelligence and social behavior of dinosaurs are not just scientific facts, but a living story that speaks of the deep connection between life, mind, and nature. Let this story be a window for you into an ancient world, filled with mysteries, wisdom, and the gentle light of knowledge. Imagine a calm dawn on ancient Earth. The sky slowly lightens, enveloping forests and fields in soft light. A slight coolness hangs in the air, and all of nature begins its day. Somewhere nearby, in secluded corners of dense thickets, are the first nests, fragile hidden treasures of new life, as ancient as the earth itself. Here, in silence and care, dinosaurs gave birth to their young, and we will now immerse ourselves in this amazing and mysterious beginning of life. A gentle beginning. How dinosaurs laid eggs. Reproduction in dinosaurs, though it happened millions of years ago, was an integral part of their existence. Like modern birds, dinosaurs laid eggs, from which tiny, fragile hatchlings emerged, ready to begin their journey into a big and dangerous world. Dinosaur eggs varied in shape and size. Some were quite small, about 10 centimeters long, similar to chicken eggs, but many reached much larger sizes. Imagine an egg as large as a soccer ball, covered with a strong shell that protected the future creature inside. These eggs were laid in secluded places, sometimes in hollows dug in the ground, sometimes among dense plant growth that hid them from curious eyes and predators. The uniqueness of this process lies in the fact that dinosaurs instinctively chose places where the climate and surrounding conditions were most favorable for the survival of their offspring. It's surprising that the shell's shape could vary. In some species, it was smooth. In others, rough or even with small ridges and patterns, which likely helped to keep the eggs in place and provided necessary ventilation. Scientists believe that such shell features played an important role in supplying oxygen to the embryo, developing inside. The mystery of nests. First sanctuaries for life. Dinosaur nests are amazing creations of nature filled with care and instinct. Some species meticulously built their clutches, creating complex structures of branches, leaves, and stones that provided warmth and protection. Especially striking are the finds of hadrosaur and ceratopsian nests, where hundreds of eggs were arranged in neat rows, like ancient pantries of life. In some places, scientists found entire nesting colonies, resembling modern penguin or seagull nests, where many individuals collectively cared for their offspring, protecting the clutches from enemies. Interestingly, the size of nests and the number of eggs varied. For example, small dinosaurs might lay only a few eggs, carefully guarded in a confined nest, while giants might lay dozens, spread over vast areas. Some species created simple hollows where they carefully placed their eggs, while others built true natural fortresses. An important element was the location. Nests were often located near bodies of water, where the climate was more humid and mild. This helped maintain optimal conditions for incubation. In other cases, nests were hidden among dense vegetation or in rock niches, places where predators could rarely reach. Hatching and first steps. Parental care. The most touching moment is when life emerges from the egg. Hatching is the beginning of a new story, full of discoveries and challenges. Scientists have found evidence that some dinosaur species actually sat on their eggs, like modern birds, warming them with their bodies. This process is called incubation. It meant that parents showed care, providing warmth and protection so that the embryo could develop at the right pace. Especially interesting are the finds related to dromaeosaurids, agile and intelligent predators, and hadrosaurs, who exhibited parental care. In several cases, adult individuals were found near hatched small skeletons, indicating that parents might have stayed nearby, protected, and possibly even fed their young. These small dinosaurs, just born, were very vulnerable. They needed protection, warmth, and learning to survive in the wild world. Probably the first weeks of life were spent under the supervision of parents, who guided and taught them to find food, avoid dangers, finds of clutches and embryos. A window to the past. One of the most striking areas of study has been dinosaur clutches and embryos, preserved to this day. Finds of such clutches have become a true window into the past, allowing us to see how life originated millions of years ago. Embryos found inside fossilized eggs have allowed scientists to learn about the peculiarities of dinosaur development and structure at the earliest stages. We can see how bones formed, what future limbs looked like, and even recognize the first movements of embryos. Some clutches contained remarkably preserved eggs with embryos at different stages of development. This made it possible to understand not only the biology of reproduction, but also social aspects. For example, how long parents might have cared for their offspring, how often they laid eggs, and how periods of activity and rest alternated. The finds also showed that not all dinosaurs behaved the same way. There were species that meticulously guarded their clutches, and there were also those that perhaps simply laid eggs and left them to their fate. This diversity of strategies reflects the richness of life and adaptation to different environmental conditions. Rhythms of life and cycles of nature. The life of dinosaurs was deeply connected to natural cycles, the change of seasons, and changes in climate and vegetation. In these rhythms, something more than just a biological process was manifested. It was a unity with nature, a harmony with the world that set the pace of life. Many scientists suggest that reproduction was timed to spring, a time when the earth awakened from its winter sleep, and the air filled with freshness and warmth. At this time, food became more accessible, which provided both parents and future offspring with the necessary resources. These cycles were important for the survival of species. Laying eggs and incubating offspring at an inappropriate time would entail enormous risk. The warm and humid season helped eggs not to dry out and hatched young to find food and shelter. The slow awakening of a new world. Concluding our journey into the world of reproduction and parental care of ancient dinosaurs, one wants to reflect on how this ancient cycle of life echoes in the modern world, how the quiet whisper of nature sounds through millions of years, reminding us of the endless chain of life and care. These stories are not just facts from a distant past. They are a reminder that care for life, patience, and hope are eternal, values that unite all living beings, regardless of time and space. May this image of a quiet dawn over an ancient nest, filled with hope and life, become for you a symbol of peace and tranquility. Allow these thoughts to slowly carry you into the world of dreams, where time and space dissolve, and nature quietly continues its endless cycle. When we think of dinosaurs, our imagination usually conjures images of enormous lizards walking on the ground, reigning in dense forests and on open plains. But the life of the Mesozoic era was much more multifaceted and amazing. Along the endless seas and beneath the boundless sky lived their mysterious neighbors, pterosaurs reigning in the air, and marine reptiles, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, and others. They were not dinosaurs, but together with them, they created a truly magical world of living creatures in which everyone had their place and way of life. Let us subtly immerse ourselves in this world, where majestic wings soar into the sky and sleek bodies majestically swim in the clear waters of ancient oceans. Everything happens quietly, measuredly, as if nature itself is slowly breathing, and we listen to its calm breath. Pterosaurs, lords of the ancient sky. Far beyond the familiar birds and bats, when the Mesozoic sky was still younger, a special group of flying reptiles reigned, pterosaurs. Their wings, stretched by skin between an elongated fourth finger and their body, seemed light, almost weightless, and allowed these creatures to glide in the air for hours, riding on air currents. Sometimes, it seems that pterosaurs are creatures from a fairy tale. Their size varied from very small, resembling modern sparrows, to gigantic, with wingspans that could reach over 7 meters, roughly the same as a small light aircraft. Imagine them, majestic and graceful, circling over the endless shores of ancient seas. catching fish and small animals. Despite their beauty and lightness, pterosaurs were powerful hunters. Their claws allowed them to cling to rocks, trees, and even prey, and sharp teeth, located in an elongated jaw, helped them seize and hold slippery fish. They were natural predators and excellent flyers. It is very interesting that pterosaurs did not have feathers like birds. Their wings consisted of thin skin stretched between bones, forming a kind of sail. Thanks to their light and hollow bones, these reptiles were remarkably lightweight. In body structure, they resembled modern birds, but remained close relatives of crocodiles and dinosaurs. Among pterosaurs, there were many species with diverse hunting and behavioral strategies. Some preferred hunting near the shore, diving into the water to snatch fish. Others hunted in the air, tracking small animals, and some might have fed on carrion or even plant matter. They could build nests on steep cliffs, where they were safe from predators. Imagine a world where, with the first rays of the sun, the sky begins to come alive. Pterosaurs awaken, flap their huge wings, and smoothly take flight, gently gliding on air currents. They are free, like the wind, and seem to symbolize freedom and lightness of being. Marine reptiles, the great gliding shadows of the oceans. If pterosaurs were the lords of the air, then in the deep blue waters of ancient seas lived their mysterious and majestic kin, marine reptiles. These were amazing creatures that adapted to life in water and became some of the most successful marine predators of the Mesozoic. Contrary to popular belief, these marine reptiles were not dinosaurs. They represented separate groups of reptiles that evolved in parallel with dinosaurs and occupied their own ecological niches. Let's look at the three main groups: ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs, each with its unique features and way of life. Ichthyosaurs, fish among reptiles. Ichthyosaurs were reptiles that outwardly greatly resembled modern dolphins or fish. They had a streamlined body, a powerful tail with a vertical fluke, and a pair of strong, paddle-like limbs. Thanks to this body shape, ichthyosaurs were fast and agile swimmers. Ichthyosaurs hunted fish and other marine inhabitants. They had large eyes, which allowed them to see in twilight and possibly at great depths, where there is almost no light. This suggested that ichthyosaurs were excellent hunters even in the darkest corners of the ocean. One of the most amazing facts is that ichthyosaurs gave birth to live young. They did not lay eggs in water like many other reptiles, but carried embryos inside themselves. This discovery was made from fossil finds with embryos inside adult individuals. This method of reproduction increased the chances of survival for the young in the harsh conditions of ancient seas. The sizes of ichthyosaurs varied from 1 meter to over 15 meters, depending on the species. Some of them were almost gigantic, conquering the seas with their power and speed. Plesiosaurs, mysterious long necks. Plesiosaurs are a completely different story. These marine reptiles had a unique shape, a broad body, 4 strong flippers, and most notably, a long and flexible neck. This anatomy made them resemble sea dragons from legends. Plesiosaurs had different types. Some had incredibly long necks, which allowed them to hunt small fish and squid without lifting their bodies out of the water. Other, short-necked forms were more powerful hunters, capable of capturing large prey. Plesiosaurs swam using their flippers, making powerful strokes, which allowed them to be not only fast but also very maneuverable. They could travel long distances, following the migrations of fish and other marine animals. Imagine a plesiosaur slowly gliding through the calm waters of ancient seas, extending its long neck to snatch a carefree fish. It is the embodiment of patience and grace, slowly moving in the realm of water. Mosasaurs, kings of the late Cretaceous oceans. Mosasaurs, the latest and most formidable of the Mesozoic marine reptiles. They appeared in the late Cretaceous and quickly became dominant in marine ecosystems. These massive creatures had a long, flexible body, powerful flippers, and enormous teeth that were like natural scissors. Mosasaurs hunted fish, squid, and even other marine reptiles. Their jaws were incredibly strong, capable of tearing prey apart. They were true predators, at the top of the food chain. The water around mosasaurs was full of life, and these reptiles, despite their formidable appearance, were part of a great balance in which each part of nature supported the other. Why pterosaurs and marine reptiles are not dinosaurs. It is very important to understand that pterosaurs and marine reptiles are separate groups of reptiles, although they lived at the same time as dinosaurs. The main difference lies in their structure and way of life. Dinosaurs were terrestrial animals whose legs were located under their bodies, allowing them to move efficiently and quickly. Pterosaurs, on the other hand, developed a unique flying apparatus and marine reptiles, bodies perfectly adapted to life in water. Anatomical features, such as the structure of bones, skull, limbs, and respiratory system, clearly distinguish these groups. For example, pterosaurs are a separate order, unique flying reptiles, and marine reptiles are diverse families adapted to the aquatic environment. Thus, each of these amazing representatives of the Mesozoic fauna complemented each other, creating a multifaceted world that developed and changed over millions of years. Interactions and ecosystems of ancient seas and skies. If we imagine the whole picture, we can see that pterosaurs, marine reptiles, and dinosaurs on land did not just coexist side by side. They formed complex ecosystems where everyone was connected to others, directly or indirectly. Pterosaurs, hunting near the shore, influenced the populations of fish and small marine animals. Marine reptiles controlled life in the depths, regulating the number of fish and squid. Dinosaurs on land, in turn, were predators, herbivores, and scavengers, maintaining balance in forests and on plains. Altogether, they created a truly grandiose picture of life, with its regularities, dramas, and miracles. When we return to the present, it is difficult not to admire the world that was before. These marine and flying neighbors of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and marine reptiles show us how life can surprise, adapt, and thrive in the most diverse conditions. Their images forever remain in our thoughts as symbols of freedom and mystery. When we look at the night sky or listen to the sound of waves, we can imagine that somewhere far away, millions of years ago, these creatures also lived, breathed, hunted, and soared over ancient seas. The world of pterosaurs and marine reptiles is part of the great history of Earth, which is worth remembering and studying, for in them lies the mystery of evolution and endless inspiration for all of us. Mesozoic ecosystems and climate. Imagine a planet in the distant past, still young, its landscapes just beginning to take on the contours that, millions of years later, would become familiar to us. The Mesozoic era, a time of mighty changes when giant lizards reigned, when forests stretched for thousands of kilometers, and the air was saturated with life. Evening falls, and we calmly immerse ourselves in this world to quietly hear its breath and feel its rhythms, like a gentle lullaby, lulling you under the cover of night. Over millions of years, throughout the Mesozoic, Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous, Earth's climate gradually changed. Imagine yourself standing in the expanses of this ancient land, feeling soft soil under your feet, covered with millions of fallen leaves and twigs that have absorbed the warmth of a long day. The air is filled with the aromas of conifers, ferns, and the first flowering plants. This is a world where the climate was not static. It changed, sometimes gently, sometimes dramatically, but always in harmony with the life it supported. In the early stages of the Mesozoic, the planet was warmer than today. Polar glaciers were absent, and even the polar regions were covered with forests. The warm and humid climate created ideal conditions for the development of enormous forests of conifers, ginkgos, and cycads, which stretched for many hundreds of kilometers. In these forests, giants reigned, not only dinosaurs, but also plants, that reached unprecedented sizes today. Imagine mighty conifers, covered with resin and needles, reaching for the sky, their branches creating a dark, almost mystical twilight beneath them. Gradually, with the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea, the climate began to change. The Earth divided into several large parts, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south, each becoming increasingly isolated. This geographical isolation became an impetus for the diversity of life. Species living on one continent began to differ from those on another. Different climatic conditions gave rise to different ecosystems. Where there was once one humid zone, areas with a drier and more continental climate appeared, with pronounced seasons of drought and rain. Let's take a closer look at this transition. Imagine how quietly and smoothly, almost imperceptibly, the landscape changes. Shrubs and grasses displace ancient ferns, and tall coniferous trees form sparse groves. The wind brings coolness and a slight dryness. New plant species appear that are better adapted to seasonal changes and drier air. These changes are reflected in the lives of dinosaurs. Some species are replaced by others that can adapt to a new way of life. Volcanism, the mighty forces within the Earth that periodically erupted outwards, had a huge impact on the climate and ecosystems of the Mesozoic. Volcanic eruptions brought ash, dust, and gases that temporarily blocked sunlight, cooling the surface. Such volcanic winters could last for months or even years, creating periods of calm and stress for living organisms. But volcanic activity not only destroyed, it renewed the Earth. Mineral substances, enriching soils, created new opportunities for plant growth and the emergence of new life forms. Breathing this ancient air, we can imagine how the content of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere changed. Oxygen levels fluctuated, sometimes exceeding modern levels, and sometimes falling below them. These changes affected the size and activity of living creatures. For example, a high concentration of oxygen allowed insects to reach large sizes, and dinosaurs could more efficiently use energy for their movement and growth. It was in this balance between gases and living matter that the stability of ecosystems was born. Vegetation in the Mesozoic was a true kingdom of life. Ferns, conifers, ginkgos, all these ancient plants carried within them the strength and wisdom of millions of years. They created shelters for small reptiles, insects, and the first mammals. Under their canopies reigned coolness, and soft light broke through the foliage, creating a play of shadows and light that modern artists and poets so love to observe. These forests were not a frozen picture. They were living, changing, filled with sounds and movement. Food chains in these ecosystems were complex and multi-layered. Herbivorous dinosaurs, such as hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, eagerly ate leaves and fruits, converting plant energy into strength for their bodies. Predators, from fast dromaeosaurids to mighty tyrannosaurs, tracked every prey, employing various hunting strategies, from ambush to long pursuits. Between them was a delicate web of interdependencies, in which each species played its role, maintaining balance. But not only land was home to life. The seas and lakes of the Mesozoic were filled with diversity: fish, amphibians, the first mammals, and insects. Water played the role of a connecting element, nourishing plants and providing soil moisture. Aquatic ecosystems interacted with land, creating dynamic boundaries where new life forms and adaptations emerged. How did the ecosystem change over time? Slowly and steadily. Over millions of years, it went through cycles of growth and decline, flourishing and waning. New plant species appeared, for example, flowering plants, which began to displace conifers. This change in vegetation led to the evolution of new species of herbivores that could better feed on fresh flowers and fruits. And along with them, predators also developed, adapting to new hunting conditions. Think about how the vast world of the Mesozoic was filled not only with physical changes, but also with invisible energies of life, movements of air, movements of water, biochemical processes that we study today with the help of technology and scientific discoveries. This world was inextricably linked with the planet, which breathed and lived with it, creating a beautiful and fragile balance. Now imagine yourself slowly drifting off to sleep, carried away by this ancient breath, by the sound of the wind in ancient forests, by the silence that follows a thunderstorm, by the soft light of dawn breaking through thick foliage. Let this world carry you on a journey through the boundless expanses of time and space, where you can feel peace and unity with nature, with eternity, and with yourself. Let every word of this story be like a quiet whisper that gently leads you into a state of peace, where you can let go of all worries and fatigue to dissolve into the silence of the night. Here, in this ancient history, you find support and strength to wake up tomorrow refreshed and full of inspiration for new achievements. And let this sleep be deeper and calmer than ever before, because it is connected with the roots of life, with the very beginning of those processes that continue even now, in every breath, in every movement of the wind, in every moment filled with the endless life of the earth. As we slowly immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of the late Cretaceous period, a rich and diverse picture of life unfolds before us, like a fairy tale world in which majestic creatures lived, the last giants of dinosaurs. This was an era of mighty herbivores and terrifying predators, a time when nature reached its apotheosis in the diversity and perfection of forms. In this calm and measured narrative, we will get acquainted with these great inhabitants of ancient Earth. Try to hear their breath and understand what their last moment was like before the great change. The first, on this slow walk through the landscapes of the late Cretaceous period, will be the Triceratops, one of the most recognizable and impressive representatives of herbivorous dinosaurs. Its massive body with a three-horned head and a powerful bony frill created the image of an ancient knight standing guard over its herd. These giants grazed on the plains, feeding on the foliage of ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. Their horns seemed to serve not only a defensive function, but could also be used in ritualistic battles for territory or females. The quiet rustle of leaves under their heavy paws accompanied the eternal cycles of life and death playing out in nature. Alongside the Triceratops, other herbivorous giants, the Ankylosaurs, ruled the world. These massive armored creatures, like living fortresses, were adorned with thick bony armor and topped with a powerful club on their tail, which they could use to repel predators. Their calm, slow movement through the forests and thickets of reservoirs was an integral part of this picturesque landscape. Their armor gleamed under the soft sunlight, and it seemed that the earth itself respected these ancient creatures, allowing them to quietly live out their days. While these herbivorous giants immersed themselves in their worlds, mighty predators reigned on the other side of the ecosystem. The true apotheosis among them was Tyrannosaurus rex, the king of the late Cretaceous forests and plains. Its enormous head with powerful jaws, capable of easily breaking bones, and sharp teeth instilled awe even in the bravest inhabitants of the ancient world. Tyrannosaurus had keen vision and a developed sense of smell, which helped it track prey. It was not just a ruthless hunter, but also a skilled strategist, adapting to circumstances. The slow but confident movement of this giant filled the surrounding nature with a special dynamic, even in the calmest moments. It is worth noting that before the arrival of tyrannosaurs, other large predators reigned, in particular Carcharodontosaurs, representatives of the family of predatory dinosaurs that were dominant in the middle of the Cretaceous period. These massive and powerful creatures, whose teeth resembled those of sharks, once occupied the top of the food chain. However, by the late Cretaceous, their role gradually gave way to new predators, although they were still found in certain regions. In parallel with them existed spinosaurs, amazing dinosaurs with long dorsal sails, who possibly led a semi-aquatic lifestyle, hunting both in water and on land. Their features indicated a unique adaptation to diverse environmental conditions. Returning to the late Cretaceous, one cannot fail to mention other large inhabitants, the Edmontosaurs. These duck-billed dinosaurs formed large herds and fed on diverse vegetation. Their social behavior and possibly parental care created the image of a living community in which everyone found their place. The slow steps of the Edmontosaurs sounded like a rhythmic song of the earth, and their movements created gentle waves on the grassy plains. The ecosystem of the late Cretaceous period was incredibly complex and harmonious. Plants, from mighty conifers to bright flowering ones, created vast forests and meadows that supported the lives of a wide variety of creatures. Food chains were rich and multi-layered, from small insects and reptiles to giant herbivores and formidable predators. However, the grandeur of this era was doomed. A catastrophe slowly loomed on the horizon that would forever change the face of our planet. A deadly asteroid impact which created the Chicxulub crater, as well as intense volcanic eruptions, including the formation of the Deccan Traps, caused sharp climate changes, which became fatal for many species. The last giants of the Cretaceous era, like heroes of an ancient saga, left the stage, giving way to new life that was born in the shadows of their giant steppes. This calm and quiet end of the golden age of dinosaurs is not just a story of demise, but a memory of a time when nature reached the peak of its diversity and power. In this narrative, filled with meditative images and smooth transitions, we experience the last moments of a great era, feel the breath of ancient creatures, and prepare for new chapters of life on Earth. Everything flows and changes, like a river, slowly but steadily heading towards its mouth. In the late Cretaceous epoch, when the world of dinosaurs reached its peak, a quiet, barely noticeable crack appeared in this harmony. It could not be heard, but it could be felt, like a slight tremor underfoot, like a change in the very breath of the earth. Many millennia ago, the diversity of life on the planet began to decline. Not in all groups at once, not everywhere, but gradually, in some places more noticeably, in others, still almost imperceptibly. Allosaurs, majestic and formidable predators, with their mighty jaws and hunting skills, gradually gave way to new masters of forests and plains, Carcharodontosaurs, Spinosaurs, and Tyrannosaurs. These new predators were no less formidable, but even their numbers and power began to slowly fade. This process, not a sudden disappearance, but precisely a gradual decline, was a sign that the ecosystem was changing. And these changes were by no means one-sided. They were caused by a complex of factors, like a quiet wind that first stirs only leaves and then is capable of overturning an entire tree. One of the most powerful factors that influenced late Cretaceous life was giant volcanic eruptions. In the heart of ancient India, in the place of modern mountains and plains, lay the Deccan Traps, enormous lava plateaus formed by numerous layers of solidified lava. These eruptions lasted hundreds of thousands of years, continuously spewing huge amounts of ash, gases, and dust into the atmosphere. Imagine these incredible scales. Thousands of square kilometers of land covered with a thick layer of lava. Mountains seemed covered with fire, and the sky was shrouded in thick clouds of gray. The sun, through the veil of ash, lost its brightness, becoming dim and cold. The world gradually cooled, and these changes were barely perceptible, like the first frosty nights when even the air begins to change. The dust and gases raised into the atmosphere did not settle immediately. They could remain in the air for years, creating a stable atmosphere of gray twilight. This reduced the amount of sunlight necessary for plants to photosynthesize. Vegetation, the main source of life for a huge number of creatures, began to suffer. A decrease in the amount of green leaves meant a decrease in food for herbivorous dinosaurs, who, in turn, became less numerous. In the chain of life, where everything is connected, a decrease in the number of herbivores also affected predators. Their numbers decreased because there was less food. This is also related to the decrease in oxygen levels in the atmosphere of the late Cretaceous period. Earth's atmosphere began to gradually change. Due to volcanic activity and a decrease in vegetation, the amount of oxygen decreased, which made life more difficult for many animals. Breathing became more strained, metabolism more energy-intensive. For giants, this was a real test, because their huge bodies required a lot of energy. Changes in climate were also reflected in seasonality. If before the climate was relatively stable, now there were sharp changes. Hot and dry summers were replaced by cold and wet winters. Precipitation became more irregular and unpredictable. Water, the basis of life, became scarce in some regions. This forced animals to migrate, to look for new habitats, which led to additional stress and confrontations. For plants, this was even more serious. Forests, which were once dense and green, became less dense. Flowering plants, those that bloom and bear fruit, were going through hard times. Instead, less demanding species, adapted to harsh conditions, appeared more often. Majestic coniferous trees, which adorned ancient landscapes, slowly disappeared from some territories. In the seas and oceans, the situation was also tense. Marine reptiles, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, who once ruled the seas, also experienced stress. Changes in water temperature, reduced oxygen, and altered food chains made their lives increasingly difficult. These magnificent creatures, some of which reached astonishing sizes, gradually lost their diversity and numbers. At this time, the first birds also appeared in the world, small, light, and agile, capable of flying in search of food and safe nesting places. They were like new chapters in the book of life that began to be written to the sounds of approaching changes. The first mammals also appeared, small, secretive creatures that were able to survive in this world of giants and become those who would later dominate the planet. Nature of that time is like an old orchestra that continues to play despite the approaching storm. Each instrument, wind, foliage, animals, sounds in harmony, but tension is already felt, as if before a prolonged storm. Every sound, a bird's cry, the rustle of grass, the rumble of volcanic thunder, fills the space with the realization that the era of great dinosaurs is gradually coming to an end. And yet, in this world full of changes, life does not stop. In the most remote corners of the planet, oases of peace and balance continue to exist. Where volcanoes have not yet left their mark, forests still whisper their ancient tales, and rivers quietly flow along their beds, continuing to give life to new generations. These last years of the Mesozoic are a time when every creature fights for its survival, when every day is a small victory, and every night is a time for rest and hope for a better tomorrow. In this soft silence before the storm, one can hear the very breath of the earth, slow, measured, full of life, and at the same time a premonition of the end. And if you close your eyes and take a deep breath, you can imagine yourself as part of this ancient history, walking through shaded forests, the air filled with their sounds, listening to the rustle of leaves and the cries of birds, feeling the soft, life-soaked soil under your feet. Let this picture carry you into a world of dreams, where time and space lose their sharpness, and the memory of the past smoothly turns into peace. We know that soon after these slow and imperceptible changes, the greatest event will occur, the asteroid impact that will forever change the face of the Earth. But until then, the world continues to live, breathe, sound, and we can immerse ourselves in its quiet melody, enjoying every inhale and exhale, every moment of tranquility. May these thoughts carry you into sleep, where past and future become one, where the history of nature sounds like a lullaby, and where you can calmly let go of consciousness, allowing it to float on the soft waves of time. Imagine the boundless, quiet night emptiness of space. Serenity seems to encompass everything around. The dark sky, strewn with stars, slowly floating comets and planets. And amidst all this silence, like a huge, silent wanderer, an asteroid flies. It calmly moves along its orbit, unhurriedly, for millions of years, until it approaches Earth. We know this guest today as Chicxulub, a giant cosmic object, approximately 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter. On that very day, which we now call the end of the Cretaceous period, this asteroid entered our planet's atmosphere with incredible speed. It made no sound. Its approach was imperceptible to living creatures until an explosion occurred, the most powerful in the entire history of life on Earth. Slowly and gradually, memories of that day are reconstructed in the imagination. First, a sudden bright light, dazzling, like a second sun. The force of the impact was so great that the impact crater formed at the collision site on the Yucatan Peninsula reached 150 kilometers in diameter. Imagine how all the land around shook from the incredible explosion. How giant. Tsunami waves rolled across the oceans, sweeping away everything in their path. From the impact site, huge masses of molten rock and ash rose into the atmosphere, which, like a giant cloud, spread across the entire planet. The sky was covered, with a dense veil of dust and smoke completely blocking the sun. Without sunlight, the temperature on the Earth's surface sharply dropped, and darkness and cold set in, lasting for many months. Scientists call this effect nuclear winter, as the consequences are very similar to those caused by a nuclear explosion. Due to the lack of light, plants stopped photosynthesizing. Food sources began to disappear, which became the beginning of a chain reaction for all living things. Imagine how silence fell in the forests and on the plains. Herbivorous animals, who in former times grazed on green meadows, now could not find a single leaf or blade of grass. Food chains that had supported life for millions of years collapsed. Predators also felt the consequences. Without prey, they wasted away and died. An icy wind pierced the empty lands, and even the most resilient creatures faced insurmountable difficulties. But the asteroid impact was only the beginning of a series of destructions. The impact on the climate and environment continued. Massive fires engulfed huge areas of the planet. Forests burned, releasing even more smoke and soot into the atmosphere. The air filled with toxic gases, including sulfur oxides, which led to acid rain. Imagine how these acid rains fell on plants and water, poisoning all living things. Soils lost their fertility. Reservoirs became unsuitable for life. Many plants, especially sensitive species, died out one after another. This also affected animals that depended on these plants. Scientists have found evidence of these events in layers of sedimentary rocks, where dust, soot, and chemical elements characteristic of volcanic activity and meteorite impacts are mixed and preserved for millions of years. This data allows us to understand how profound the catastrophe was. Among the perished species were almost all large dinosaurs. Their long reign, lasting tens of millions of years, ended in one tragic moment. Imagine the mighty tyrannosaurs and triceratops, the majestic ankylosaurs and other giants. All of them disappeared from the face of the earth. Along with them, most marine reptiles, such as mosasaurs and plesiosaurs, also vanished, as did many smaller species, both on land and in the oceans. However, in this darkness of catastrophe, there is also a light of hope. Some groups of animals survived this ordeal. Among them were the ancestors of modern birds and mammals. These creatures, often small in size and possessing flexible adaptive abilities, managed to find refuge, survive in the cold and darkness, and gradually begin a new era. Imagine how, after tens of thousands of years, the dust veil began to dissipate, the sun returned, and the earth gradually came back to life. The first green shoots appeared, and with them, new generations of animals. The world, though changed, began to recover, filling with the sounds of life and hope. Thus, after the most terrible night in the planet's history, morning came, the morning of a new world, where life continued its movement, transforming and developing. And this cycle repeats again and again, end and beginning, destruction and rebirth, death and life. If you close your eyes now and take a deep breath, you can imagine how the earth breathes, how fog rises over lakes, how forests whisper. All this reminds us that even after the most difficult trials, nature recovers. And in this tranquility, in this constancy of movement, we can find solace and peace. May the history of this day, filled with drama and grandeur, remain with you as a reminder of the eternal cycle of life, that every ending is also an opportunity for a new beginning. In this thought there is comfort and hope that help you fall asleep and find peace. The world we live in is a continuous story of birth and rebirth. Centuries pass, epochs fade, giving way to new times and new inhabitants. Imagine the silence that reigned after the great storm, a storm that forever changed the face of the planet and life on it. After the greatest giants of the Mesozoic disappeared, a new chapter began, a time when small and inconspicuous creatures took over the reins. The time of the Cretaceous-Paleogene recovery, as the beginning of a new era is called, when after the asteroid impact and waves of volcanic eruptions, nature slowly began to heal, like a wound on the Earth's body. In these first post-catastrophic epochs, the air gradually cleared, rivers again played with transparent streams, and the earth began to be covered with fresh greenery. At this moment, the air was filled with the delicate aroma of new flowers, and damp earth, and everything around breathed with cautious hope. It was at this time that mammals, who had previously hidden in the shadows of great reptiles, began to occupy the vacated niches. They were small, inconspicuous, and cautious, but nature gave them a chance to prove themselves. Under the cover of night, they left their shelters, burrows, hollows, and underground passages, to explore a world filled with new opportunities. Mammals were diverse, from tiny insectivores to the first primates, who observed with their own eyes the changing seasons, the shifting sunlight, and the mysteries of the forest. Their brains gradually developed, giving them ever more understanding of the surrounding world, new ways of interacting and surviving. Birds, who survived the Great Extinction, also adapted to the new era. They were direct descendants of feathered dinosaurs and carried within them an ancient legacy. Their light, air-filled wings filled the sky with freedom, and their clear songs filled forests and fields with new sounds of life. Birds became a living bridge between the past and the present, a symbol of continuation and rebirth. The first post-catastrophic years were a time of change, when ecosystems were built with particular caution. Small plants, breaking through the scorched earth, softened the soil, creating a basis for complex chains of life. The forest grew slowly but surely, offering shelter and food to new inhabitants. These processes were like a slow dance, where every step is important and precise. In nature there is no rush, only patience and constancy. Mammals learned to understand each other, developed social bonds, uniting into groups that helped them defend against dangers. Wild small predators and herbivorous animals mastered different survival strategies. Some hid in the darkness of night. Others carefully watched for the slightest changes in the environment. Their behavior became more and more complex, and with it, Their intelligence grew. Meanwhile, birds did not stand still. They explored new territories, from tall trees to marshy meadows, filling the air with joy and life. Some species learned to migrate long distances, sensing changes in seasons and temperature, following ancient instincts. Returning to mammals, one cannot fail to note their gradual diversification. Among them appeared the first predators, absorbing the traits of agility and cunning. They hunted insects, small reptiles, and even fish in streams. Others became herbivores, consuming young grass and soft leaves, which gave them energy for life and growth. In those times, the planet was filled with color and sounds. Fresh green fields were replaced by dark forests, streams murmured nearby, and the wind gently swayed the branches. Landscapes changed, but life always found a way to continue, filling the world with new stories and destinies. Some of the first mammals began to master the aquatic environment, smoothly gliding in shallow lakes and rivers. Later, their descendants would go into the open ocean, becoming whales and dolphins. But then, at the very beginning, they were just learning to be in the water as confidently as on land. Meanwhile, birds perfected their wings, improving aerodynamics and flight power. They became important participants in ecosystems, spreading plant seeds, regulating insect populations, and adorning the sky with their flights. When the dawn of a new day was replaced by the gentle light of sunset, mammals and birds found their resting places in dense thickets, in shelters under stones, or in tree hollows. Their world was full of care for offspring, who, as before, needed protection and love, raising young, one of the most touching aspects of the life of the new masters of the earth. Parents learned to be patient and attentive, teaching their babies to catch food, avoid dangers, and find their way home. This process lasted for long weeks, months, and even years, forming a bond that was stronger than any element. Birds, sheltering in nests, carefully warmed their eggs, and then learned to fly with young chicks, passing on the secrets of survival. It was a complex and beautiful dance of life, which was repeated from generation to generation. All this happened under the quiet whisper of the wind, the soft rustle of leaves, and the calm ringing of streams. The world was full of harmony and tranquility, where every life was valued and carefully protected. Thinking about those times, one can feel amazing peace. Despite all the trials and dangers, life always wins. It finds ways to continue, adapt, and grow. Over time, mammals became larger and stronger. The first giants appeared, ancestors of elephants, rhinos, and other majestic animals that filled new ecosystems. They were an important part of nature, providing balance and diversity. Birds also did not stand still. Some species turned into mighty predators, others into small singing inhabitants of forests. Their evolution was a continuous process, filled with the joy of life and amazing discoveries. When night fell on the earth, the stars seemed to light the way for these small heroes of the new world. Slowly, step by step, they built a future that would one day become home for you and me. And it is in this tranquility and harmony that all the beauty of life lies. The path from ancient giants to small mammals and birds is a story of continuous rebirth and hope. Every living creature is part of a great whole, support and help for each other. In this world where everything changes and time flows continuously, life continues to move forward, quietly, confidently, with all its strength and wisdom. And so, to the sounds of the night and the soft light of the moon, one can close their eyes and let their thoughts carry them into this amazing world, full of hope and life. A world after dinosaurs, where everything begins anew. Evening slowly descends upon the earth, and the soft light of the stars begins to twinkle in the serene sky. Silence envelops the world like a light blanket. muffling sounds and allowing thoughts to travel to where time ceases to have power. In such moments, our consciousness is easily carried away to distant epochs, to where giants reigned, who once ruled the planet. Dinosaurs. How strange, and at the same time amazing to realize that these majestic creatures, seemingly long gone, have not left us completely. They live within us, in our world, in our memory, and even in our bodies. Their legacy is a thread that connects epochs, giving an understanding of life and its endless diversity. Modern birds. Direct descendants of dinosaurs. Let's start with what might sound unexpected but is a fundamental scientific fact. All modern birds are direct descendants of a group of dinosaurs known as theropods. In the distant Mesozoic period, millions of years ago, these predatory bipedal reptiles walked the earth, and now their descendants soar into the sky on light wings covered with feathers. Feathers originally appeared not for flight, but for thermoregulation, and possibly for communication and camouflage. Over time, it was feathers that became the decisive element that allowed animals to take to the air, forever changing the dynamics of life on the planet. When you see a bird flying over the ground, be it a small tit, a bright parrot, or a mighty eagle, imagine that the spirit of a distant ancestor lives within it. This connection is so strong that scientists, by studying the structure of bones, muscles, and even through genetic research, can trace a direct line from ancient dinosaurs to modern birds. This discovery has become one of the greatest in paleontology, changing our understanding of evolution. Birds are, in a way, living dinosaurs that continue to tell their ancient story, reminding us that life is an endless process of change and adaptation. Their songs, flights, and even behavior, all this is a bridge between the past and the present. Paleontology, a key to the past. Moving from living descendants to those quiet testimonies from the past that are preserved in the earth, it is worth reflecting on the role of paleontology. This science, like a magician, allows us to look into distant times, to extract from the depths of centuries fragments of life imprinted in fossil remains. When we hear the word paleontology, images of excavations come to mind, of scientists, in dusty suits, carefully extracting bones and fossils from the earth. Each such find is a small window into history, which reveals the secrets of ancient ecosystems, the behavior of dinosaurs, their anatomy, and even social connections. Scientists, by studying skeletons and imprints, can learn a lot. For example, the structure of bones can determine how fast an animal grew, how it moved, what it ate. Footprints and tracks in the sand tell us how dinosaurs interacted with each other, whether they hunted in packs, how they cared for their offspring. In recent decades, thanks to new technologies such as computed tomography and 3D modeling, we can literally revive dinosaurs on screen, see how their muscles moved, study the structure of feathers and skin, and the discovery of well-preserved fossils with remnants of soft tissues and even pigments helps to restore the color scheme and texture of their bodies. Each new find is like a piece of a huge puzzle that helps us understand not only dinosaurs, but also the processes of evolution that lead to the emergence of new life forms and their disappearance. Paleontology is a science that constantly expands the horizons of our understanding. Why do dinosaurs inspire us? A natural question arises. Why do dinosaurs, out of the countless living creatures, continue to inspire and attract the attention of millions of people around the world? The answer can be found in their grandeur and mystery. Dinosaurs were enormous and diverse creatures, from miniature ones no bigger than a chicken to giants tens of meters long. They embody not just the past, but an era of grandiose changes, struggle and survival. Their stories are stories of endurance, adaptation, and the power of life. In childhood, many of us were fascinated by books and films about dinosaurs, dreaming of seeing them with our own eyes. These images become ingrained in memory, forming a deep emotional connection with nature and the history of Earth. As we grow up, we continue to look at them with respect and admiration, because they remind us how mysterious and beautiful life can be. In addition, dinosaurs remind us of changes and cycles of time. Their extinction is a reminder that everything in the world is temporary, and that even the most powerful creatures are subject to the influence of the environment and random catastrophes. This teaches us to treat nature with care and to respect the fragility of life. Inspiration in art and culture. Dinosaurs have become heroes of countless stories, films, and works of art. From the first illustrated encyclopedias to modern science fiction blockbusters, they occupy a special place in culture. They inspire artists to create picturesque canvases, sculptors to embody gigantic forms, and writers to compose amazing stories. Music, literature, and cinema create an atmosphere of mystery and adventure, allowing each of us to touch a distant era through imagination. Even in museums, dinosaur exhibits become centers of attraction, places where one can feel the breath of history. This creative flow supports interest in science and stimulates new generations of researchers. Many children, seeing a Tyrannosaurus or Triceratops skeleton for the first time, decided to dedicate their lives to studying the ancient world. Thus, dinosaurs not only remain alive in art, but also contribute to the development of science. Dinosaurs in us: memory, inspiration, and the future. At the end of this journey, it is worth reflecting on the fact that dinosaurs are not just ancient creatures from textbooks or museums. They live within us through memory, through the thirst for knowledge and wonder they awaken. Their history is a reminder that life on Earth is a continuous flow of changes, where each era replaces another, leaving its traces. We are part of this great process, and the blood of those who lived millions of years ago flows within us. In moments of silence, when the world falls asleep, one can imagine that ancient giants still roam dense forests and open plains, that their breath is felt in the rustle of leaves and the whistle of the wind. May this image bring peace and inspiration, helping you drift into sleep with a sense of belonging to something great and eternal. Now that the story has come to an end, just close your eyes and fall asleep. Good night.